Hello everyone, I hope I'm in frame. The phone is propped up on the tailgate of the pickup. It's November 4th, 2025, end of walnut harvest, and we're actually getting some nice yield data on a rootstock trial near here. Little delay before the harvester shows up here in a while. Wanted to run over and check out this block that I haven't been in actually since it was planted. A real brief history. This is not a replant site. This is virgin for walnuts. Actually, it was a pear orchard. Even up here, it was one of the last pear orchards up here in the Sacramento Valley. The soil's changed dramatically on this about 80-acre piece from beautiful, loamy, sandy stuff. But back here along this slough, which I'll walk back to at the end to show just how shallow the soil is and how clay it is, and the hard pan. We've got a nice heavy soil site back here where not a lot of walnuts are being planted these days, but it's a good test. And so when the grower here planted all these potted clones, as all three rootstocks, VX211, Grizzly, and RX1 here, I asked him to actually sandwich the RX1 in between the VX211 and RX1 back here in the clay soils, because that's something we'd like to look at. Most of our trials are on either replant sites, but in sandy or loamy soils. So this is the other end of the spectrum. Going to be tough to grow walnuts back here long term. The trees are not going to get huge. There's other walnut orchards along this slough that I know that it'll be tough, but it's a good test. And so I'm going to pick up the phone and talk about what we did here. It's at third leaf. It's hard to see it on a phone, on a video. I'll show you, and you'll probably be able to tell the trees on one side are larger than the others, but I've measured a few and written it actually on the tree. Instead of posting some data sheet, we'll just write it on the tree and show you. So we're showing you on, once I pick up the phone, I'll tell you it's Grizzly, Chandler on Grizzly on one side, Chandler and RX1 on the other. Then there's about 1,000, I believe, Grizzlies here, several rows, and then the VX211 starts. There, the difference is so pronounced, it's not that interesting of a video. The trees on Grizzly are just much bigger, so it's which we see almost everywhere, so it's not that interesting to show. Here, which a heavy clay soil site, it's an RX1 type soil. That's what people are kind of generally interested in when they have heavy ground. They want to know, how does Grizzly do on heavy soil versus RX1. So here we go. And apologies if I was hard to hear or something like that. Okay, so very simple. Now that I got the phone here in my hand, Chandler on Grizzly on the right, and then many rows that way, and then Chandler on RX1 on the left. And what I've done is measured, I went quite a ways down the row actually, but for the first three trees, because they're very representative of what we see down the row and between the two blocks, is measured the circumference of the tree, then translated that into the surface area as though you cut the tree and had the cross-sectional of the trunk, because that's the legitimate measure to compare a tree to a tree, because a trunk is like a pipe. So most people know that the difference between a 2-inch pipe and a 2.5-inch pipe, you can get a lot more water through that 2.5-inch pipe, a lot more than the ratio of 2 inches to 2.5, because you're getting into volume, and that has to do with the area of that tube, not the circumference of it. So what I did is converted, actually I let AI do it because I checked it a couple times, but now you can just tell your phone to convert the circumference into the surface area. You don't have to do the calculations, and it checks out. So good for Google AI. I've converted it to the surface area, and then what I did is the percentage difference from one tree to the next, just a few down the row. But before we start looking at that, let's just see if we can pick up so there is a Chandler on Grizzly, and I try to put the top of the tree at the top of the frame, come over. Yeah, it maybe appears on video that this row of trees is bigger than that row. But really, what all data collection has always proven is you got to measure that trunk. You've got to and calculate how big that pipe is that's feeding the top. That's how many nuts it can make, and that's how fast it's growing. And in the past, the UC, to prove this, has actually done things like measured the cross-sectional area of the trunk and then actually cooked the entire tree down to the dry weight to say, does it always translate to the amount of organic material there? And it typically does. So, and we know that the surface area of that trunk, as though you cut it off, always translates to the potential yield of that tree up there and how big that tree is. So enough math lesson. Okay, so here we have a Chandler on RX1, and its circumference was 22 centimeters, and that gives you a surface area of that trunk of 38 centimeters. Come over to this Chandler on Grizzly, and he's 24 centimeters, which gives you a cross section of 46 centimeters squared, and that tree's 20% larger. And if you're out here and you put your hand around the tree or whatever, you'd say, that looks about right. So the math checks out to the smell test, okay? Looks like we're in a weaker streak here. The trees get smaller as you go. This Chandler on RX1, 20 centimeters around, 32 centimeters cross-sectional area. This Chandler on Grizzly next door, 26 centimeters, 54 centimeters squared. That tree's 60% larger. And again, your eyeball test would say that sounds right, or looks right rather. And they also, so here is 18 centimeters was the circumference, 26 centimeters squared. And this Chandler on Grizzly, as I said, it looks like everything's getting weaker as we go this way in the field. 20 centimeters, 32 centimeters squared, 23% larger. So what we can say is it looks like if you averaged all these out and spent all day measuring hundreds of trees, it looks like probably the Chandlers on Grizzly, third leaf, 2 years after budding, are on average 30% larger, 25% something. They're larger. Everything looks healthy. I walked around quite a bit for the last 20 minutes. I haven't found a crown gall on anything, so that doesn't seem to be a big deal. But yeah, let me walk down to the ditch and see, show you what the ditch is right down there. I'll pause it a bit. We'll walk down there and look at what kind of soils we're really talking about here. Okay, we've made it to the end of the orchard here. So hopefully it shows up color-wise. Kind of low light with the storm coming in, but just clay soils. This will really show it. And very, I mean, maybe technically not hard pan, but I mean, that is some, it's almost hard pan. Big old crumbly clay stuff, little tiny bit of topsoil. And that's, oops. Yep, that's what we got going on back here. So, yep, there you go. Hope that's interesting.